So what are sequence diagrams? Today morning we discussed a lot on sequence diagrams. Let me again go with this. Sequence diagrams are used for modeling interactions between objects. So how two objects communicate with each other, that is modeled here, and it also gives this time oriented view, which message is passed to which object. In a we use time to represent that. So this is important. Model in what order the message is taking place. So we have to understand what are object interactions, how objects really interact with each other. For that I have taken a very simple scenario here. Sequence modeling is done for a use case. So you come out with one model for a scenario or for an use case. So if you have 4 or 5 use cases, you'll have 5 different models. So you take up this scenario. Professor views profile of a student. As a professor, he can view profile of any student, right? So we are going to go and model this. Before modeling this, I'm just displaying the code here. As I told you, we should first model, then convert that model to code. But since we have learned code first, we'll first understand this code and see how it is modeled. Okay. So I've taken 3 classes. One is the user interface class, or you can consider this to be the main class. Another one is the professor class, and another one is the student class. So the use case here is professor views profile of a student. So when you take a look at the professor class, you have one particular method called view student profile. A professor will invoke this particular object method to actually view the student profile. So what is the parameter for this? A student object is given as a parameter. So inside this, we have another method s.getInfo of s. This .getInfo is nothing but a method inside the student class. So this method will get the registration number and print the student's data. So this is how this particular professor class has a link with the student class. As I told you, sequence modeling is about communication between 2 different objects. So we have to create 2 different objects here. Say in the main class, I'm creating an object for type student. So I'm saying student name is Satish, registration number 12 BCE, and some phone number I'm giving. How this object is created, data is passed to the parameterized constructor here, and the object is getting created for the student. Now we have to create an object for professor. So professor P is equal to new professor. So 2 objects are getting created, and how these 2 objects communicate? I mean, these 2 objects, how they communicate by this particular method, view student profile. So I'm just invoking professor.view student profile of S1, passing the student object here. So this will actually invoke with which method? From the main, we are calling which method? This particular method. Let me erase all these things and draw that. So from the main, which method is being invoked from the professor object? This method. From here, inside the professor object, which method is invoked? S.registration. So that is how the objects communicate, and we have to understand one thing, whether the calls are synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous or asynchronous. See, when you take a look at this particular method, there is a call happening to s.getInfo. So the call gets transferred here, and it starts executing all these lines of code. So while it is executing, can the next line here execute? Can the next line here in this method execute? No. So this method is actually waiting for a return from this method. So when you call a method and this method suspends all its activities, waits for this method to return void, then you call such calls to be synchronous calls. Say this profile displayed will not be shown to the user until this method finishes the execution. So you call and then you get a return back, then this statement gets executed. Such kind of calls are called synchronous calls. Okay. You understood how this piece of code works? Very simple. So now we will go and model the objects. So what are the objects participating in this scenario? We have a professor object and we have a student object. And how objects are represented in UML is, it is represented using a rectangle like this with the object name. So for instance, if I have professor and I want to denote it as an object, how actually I should denote this? Colon professor. So it means it's not a class, it's an object of type professor. Likewise, if it is a student object, how will I say? Colon student. So it means it's a type student, it's an object, not a class. Say the notations that are given here these notations are from Argo UML. There are some slight variations, but it's fine. If you take a look at your textbooks, the notation will be like this. It will be like, say, UI. So that's how you denote all the objects. So I have just modeled all the objects. This is the professor object, this is the student object, and I am saying this as user interface. You can think that of the main class. Normally when you work with projects like JSP, you'll have an UI class there. With your HTML code, you will create an object for that class, and then you will invoke the core methods in your core business classes. So that's why I'm saying there is an object of type UI here. Okay. So first, what is that we have to do? We have to model all the objects. Okay. Next, modeling messages. This is very important and very simple. From the user interface, main class, which method is being invoked from the professor class? View student profile, and then we pass the student object. So this method actually gets called from the professor object. So when you call this method becomes active. So when you say this box, it means that this particular method has been invoked, has become active. After you call this method from here, which method is getting called? s.getInfo, that is the method in the student object. So there is a method called, this method is particularly present in the student object, we are invoking this. So when you are invoking this method, it means that this method becomes active. Active in the sense it's getting in the data, doing some process. So that process can be for this time. Maybe it's displaying the data out and things like that. So this box denotes that particular method is processing, it is active. So once when it is displayed, what it returns? Return void. So it returns the transfer back to the caller. So who is the caller here? View student profile is the caller. So once when student profile gets the method back, what it will display? It will display a message, right? I showed you in the screen. What it will display actually is, I just modeled that here. After the return comes back here, what will display? Profile displayed, information will be displayed, and then the call will be transferred back to your UI or the main class. So that's what is modeled here. Very simple. So when you take a look at this method from this object gets invoked, and that one invokes this method from this object, and there is a transfer, return from here and a return from there. That's it. Your program terminates after that. So when you're talking about modeling messages, what you have to give here is the methods, the parameters that you're passing to invoke this particular operation. And what this box denotes, the method getting active, the method processing it. Once the method returns back, see the activity stops here. Because it returned the data back, so it's done. Okay. And we say it gives a time-oriented view. Do you agree to this? What do you mean by a time-oriented view? This method gets invoked first. After this method. So you see here, I've just put this arrow mark here to say there is a time difference. And then after this completes, there is a return and there is a return. One more thing, while you are using in the exams, your return should be of this notation. Please keep this in mind. It should be a dotted arrow. That is the standard notation with an arrow like this. So that is the notation given in your textbooks. In Argo UML, I am getting this particular notation, but fine. So whenever you are returning something, you just give this notation. Okay. So the first thing that you are going to do is take all your use cases. You already have your class diagram, so you know which method is calling which method in which class. So you have the class diagrams. Now you have to go and model the sequence diagrams. So notations used in your examinations, I kindly request you to follow these notations. The first thing is for object, a rectangle, and then object name with a colon, and then the name of the class. Synchronous calls, a line with an arrowhead that is shaded. What do you mean by synchronous call? You're going to get a return from the method you have called. Your method will suspend all its activities till that return is achieved. What is object activity? Say when you invoke a method, that object, that method will be active until it responds back, right? So that is represented using this kind of a box. And object lifespan is denoted using something like this. You could have seen that object lifespan here. So this is object lifespan. Like you put an object within braces, you create an object here, the lifespan will be within these braces, right? So that denotes the object lifespan. Or else you can talk about the object lifespan for this particular use case, viewing profile. Is there any object getting destroyed immediately after it's getting created? Those things can be modeled. Okay. So there are other ways to represent sequence modeling. If you go online and learn, there will be people who just tell you like this, professor, and then they'll put student, and then they'll have two lines, and then they'll just say teachers. They'll just write teachers, and then they'll say response. They'll be just writing some blunt messages. I don't know how this can be modeled into code. That's at a very high abstract level. So we'll not accept such kind of models in our examinations. We have to accept only models that work. Okay. So asynchronous calls. We have seen synchronous. What is asynchronous? Can anyone tell me? Have you heard of this asynchronous calls? You invoke an operation on an object but does not wait for a response. You call something and you don't wait for a response. You carry on. Say for instance, I will call a method and there will be a transfer to the method. But then I can go and carry out the next operations in my own method. I will not wait for a response. Where have you seen such kind of calls? I will give an example here. Have you heard of threads in Java? So parallel processing, wherein you will have a call to two other threads. Say if my main program, if you take, the main class itself is a thread, right? From here I can invoke two objects that are actually extending the thread class. So there can be one call to one thread, another call to another thread. So I'll just call the threads, it will execute parallelly, independently, and the main thread will execute independently and finish. So these kinds of calls are called asynchronous calls. So you have to understand what is thread and how it works. If you're really interested in, you can go and visit my lectures on threads and various concepts on threads. I have given an example here. I have two files. I'm writing parallelly to these two files using threads. I'll just show the code. For people who understand, it's fine. For those who don't understand, please visit that. So here, I just show this code. You see here, I have two objects created and each object will be writing to a particular file. And each object is nothing but a thread. So I'm just calling file1.start, file2.start. These are nothing but objects of this particular class. And dot start is nothing but a thread that is getting started. When I call dot start, the void run function will be executed. So it's going to write parallelly to this file. Another thread will be writing parallelly to file2.txt. So we just call the thread and we leave it. We are not waiting for any response from the thread back. So the main thread will execute. So this call will happen, this call will happen. Main thread will go and terminate. It will not wait for the threads to complete. So this kind of calls are called asynchronous calls in programming. And we'll just see how I have modeled asynchronous calls in sequence diagrams. So this is the main class. From here, I'm starting thread 1 from this particular object. So this is going to invoke the run method inside that object and start writing to the file. So this run method will in turn return back to the same object. That's a self-reference. So inside that run, I have writing to the file IO statements, which will work and it will complete writing to the file. Likewise, I am starting another thread, start method for object 2. So this will again invoke the run method for writing to file 2. Parallelly, these two threads will execute and complete. And we are not waiting for any return here. There is no return to the main. Because it's a thread, it will execute independently and finish. So when you're talking about asynchronous calls, the notation is just give a line, the arrowhead should be this. That's the arrowhead. Synchronous calls, what's the arrowhead? You give a line like this and then you shade it like this. Okay. Is it clear? Modeling object creation, I'm sorry, modeling object creation, it should be creation, during interaction and object termination. So you have to understand these two things. See, I can call a method and within that method I can create an object. You understand? I can call a method, within that method I can create an object. Let me erase this and again write it. I'm sorry for this. So say you have a method in some object, within this method I can go and create another object. I can use this new operator and create another object. That is possible, right? So one object can instigate the creation of another object. A method can itself create another object. That is modeling object creation. Okay. During interaction, and another thing is object termination. An object can also be terminated. For instance, when you create an object, there is a reference to an object created on the heap. Say if this is a student object, and if I say S is equal to student, new student, so there can be a name for the student and then some gender for the student. So the reference will be on the stack. So S is a variable pointing to a dynamic object allocated on the heap. So if you remove this reference by just saying this dot S equal to null, it means you are removing the reference. It means that Java garbage collection can kick in and collect this available area for other processes. That is the meaning. In C++, we use delete for deleting a dynamically allocated object. So what is object termination? Enforcing an object to be deleted. Once when I delete this object, can I access any of the data members here? No, because the pointer reference is removed, you cannot access any of the data members. These things we should have learned in our first year. I think it should be very familiar to you guys. So how to model object creation and termination in sequence diagramming? I have just created a class for professor. I'll tell you what this code is. This professor class has got a variable of type father, a variable father of type dependent. Dependent is nothing but another class. It's a kind of aggregation that we have learned in our previous classes. So father is of type dependent. Dependent is nothing but another class with name and address, with a parameterized constructor, and with a member function display dependent. So what I am doing here in this professor class is create dependent. So this method, what it does is it gets two parameters, name and address, and it creates this object. So method in the professor class creating the object, that is the first method. I have delete dependent. What this one does is I'm just setting the reference for this particular object to null. So I can delete the reference. That's the meaning there. So there is another method in the professor class. And the professor can also view dependent details. What is view dependent detail? It returns the father name and father address. Okay. So in the main class, what I'm trying to do here is I'm just calling create dependent, pass name and address for the dependent. So what this one does, it just transfers the call here, creates this new object for father. Next I'm saying delete dependent. What delete dependent does, it sets the reference to null. So it means we are terminating the object created for the dependent. So how to model this? How to model deleting the dependent and creating the dependent? So when this father object is actually getting created, when create dependent kicks in, only then the father object is getting created, right? So we'll see how this is modeled here. Say from professor, we are calling create dependent and passing the dependent name and address. And then this professor will in turn call the constructor of the dependent and pass the name and address. So who is creating this particular object? Professor is creating that using a method call. So that's why this particular object is placed here. It just means a method creates this object. So that's why this comes into existence here and not here. Object placement. And how you delete this object? You call delete dependent from the user interface, that is in the professor class. And inside this object, what you're doing is setting the dependent reference to null. So once when it is set to null, it means you're terminating the lifespan for this object. So the null reference means it will remove the reference and it's deleted. So how you denote delete in sequence modeling? With a into mark like this. So it means after this arrow mark, I cannot access any of the methods or data members for dependent. So when I delete dependent, will I be able to access any of the members for dependent? No. I showed this execution of the code in the morning. Maybe I'll just show it again. We'll see how this one works and understand that alone. Let me quickly go through that. Where is that? Yeah, delete dependent and create dependent. Here is this particular code. So I'll share this with you. You can also go through this and understand this. So let me copy this here and run it. Okay. So first what I will do is I will just create the dependent for the professor, and then professor should be able to view dependent. Okay, these two things we will do. We will try these two things. Let's check whether it is working. So let's run this. So professor creates that dependent is getting created, and the professor is able to view his dependent. So let's see whether the data is getting populated here. So Ram and Vellore. So view dependent returns Ram and Vellore. So dependent object was created. Now if I go and delete this dependent, will I be able to view the dependent data? That is the question. So what is happening in the delete dependent method is I'm just setting this.father is equal to null. So let me just go and delete dependent. And then I will try to view dependent. So what is happening in delete dependent? I'll just show that code here. It's nothing but in delete dependent, I'm setting this.father is equal to null. It means you cannot access the father object because the reference has been set to null. So after this, if I go and terminate, and then if I try it with view dependent, what will happen? Let's go and execute this. Let's check. We have to get an exception here because it's a null pointer exception. Your reference is not actually pointing to any object there. So you're terminating the lifespan of an object. You're forcefully terminating it. That is possible. And how will you model that here? Say delete dependent is actually setting the thing to null and it is terminating this object lifespan. See, whether we are understanding UML or not, we are understanding some object orientation concepts. That is the good thing. Modeling self-reference for objects. So we have already seen this. What is this self-reference? For instance, you see this arrow mark here. It is just referring back to the same object. What does this mean? For that I have given a simple piece of code. Again, the professor class, I have submit marks by the professor. So professor submits some mark. Internally, I am calling validate marks. So from here, the call goes to validate marks. So I call a method within the professor object, and that method in turn calls another method within the same object. So it's a self-reference there. So there is this validate marks, it is in the same object. So when you have such things, you're going to have an arrow mark pointing to the, because the call will return to the same object. So here we are just going to call submit marks in the main. So this will go and call submit marks. Submit marks will call validate marks, which is there in the same object. So validate marks will in turn return where? Return back to the same object, and then this will return the mark back to the main. So this becomes a self-reference. So such method calls, how will you model? You see here, from the user interface, submit marks is invoked, mark is passed. This is actually in the professor object. And this one calls validate marks, which is actually returning to the same object. So this activity represents the activity for validate marks. It's validating whether it's less than 0, greater than 100. Once when that validation happens, it returns back true or false to the same object. And after that it returns, so we just submit the marks to the database and display a message back to the user. So this activity is for submit marks method in the professor object. This activity is for validate. So that's it. And only thing is, in the exam you have to be a good artist to draw all these things. When you have Argo UML, life is very simple. Let me show you how to construct this using Argo UML. I don't know whether I closed this. Yeah. So you go to Argo UML. How will you construct a sequence diagram? Just go on the top. You can see when you just move your cursor, new sequence diagram. Click on that. That's it. So this is for the objects. So you just click on the objects. How easy it is. And you want to add the name for the objects. What you can do is click on that particular box. You can directly add it there, or you can add it here. Say I'm saying UI. So it creates the name. You want to add this to be professor object, and here it is say student. That simple it is. So all the objects are done. You have to decide whether the calls are synchronous or asynchronous. So we know we are going to do a synchronous call. You see on the top, you have many buttons here. New call action, new send action. New call action is nothing but a synchronous call. Just click on this arrow mark and then that's it. It automatically gives a return to because it's a synchronous call. And it also denotes an activity for your call. And you want to populate the method name, just go and put say view profile. Say some method I have to give, right? Say I have to pass the parameter. So from where you will get the method definition? From your class diagram. Your sequence diagram should match your methods in the class diagram. There should not be any inconsistencies there. And from the professor you want to call some method. Say this method calls some method. How will I do that? This goes to a synchronous call. Just drag and drop, finish. So you see, it automatically models that. Only after this returns a message back. So that's a time perspective also here. So you can go and give some method name here to say get info. Okay. If you want to terminate the lifespan of this object, you have a terminator to object terminator. New destroy action. It destroys terminates the object. Say I can go and remove certain things by just right clicking, remove from the diagram, it removes that. Very easy to construct. Say if you want to terminate, destroy that particular object, just take this one, call this. So it destroys. So it means that after that I cannot have any messages to this particular object because the reference was removed. Okay. So that's how you model a sequence diagram and see to that you can use Argo UML for all your modeling. It's very easy.